Hello, everybody. Today we shall study the lesson Footprints Without Feet by H.G. Wells. This story is about the scientist who is the protagonist named Griffin. He was discovering the way to make a man go invisible, but accidentally swallowed the drug he made and was invisible with no solutions to come back. The explanation of the mystery was really simple enough. Two boys suddenly noticed a few muddy imprints of bare feet. They started wondering that what was a bare feet man doing on the steps of a house in the middle of London. They also started thinking that where was the man as he was nowhere to be seen. They suddenly saw another footmark. The man was still not visible. They started following the footprints. They followed them until the footprints became invisible. They had been following a scientist who had discovered how to make human body transparent or invisible. It was Griffin, the scientist who had been working for a long time to see how to make human body invisible. Suddenly, one day he consumed certain drugs which made his body invisible, though it could be felt. Griffin was a lawless person as he had once burned down the house of his landlord who was trying to throw him out of the house. And then, as he wanted to be invisible, he had to move his clothes and then roam around without clothes and without money. His presence was felt after he stepped in some mud, and his footprints could be seen as he walked. He easily escaped the boys who had followed him, but he had many more adventures coming. He had chosen a bad time to wander in London, as it was winter season going on and the air was bitterly cold. He decided to stay inside a store for warmth. As he went inside the store and closing time arrived, the doors of the store were shut and nobody was there inside. He got food to eat and wore new clothes without paying for. He became invisible again as he wore shoes, overcoat, and a hat. He then found cold meat and coffee in the kitchen and ate them. After that, he also had sweets and wine from the grocery store. Then he slept on the pile of quilts kept nearby and could not wake up on time. Next morning, when the assistant came and started approaching him, he became nervous and started running away. Then the assistant started chasing him as well. He escaped only because he quickly removed his new clothes again. He was invisible and naked without any money in the chilling air of January. This time he decided to try the clothing of the theatrical world, as he knew that he would surely find something there to cover his face with. He quickly reached Drury Lane, the center of the theatrical world, as he was shivering with cold. He found a shop according to his needs and entered it. He came out wearing badges around his forehead, false nose, side whiskers, and a hat. As he did not have any money, he attacked a shopkeeper and robbed him of all his money. Then he felt that London was too crowded and decided to go to a small village nearby Iping. Now he thought that now so many people are there in London, so it's more crowded. So let's leave that place. He took a train and booked two rooms in the local inn. The event of a stranger coming and staying at the inn in the winter night was not a normal thing to happen in Iping, and everybody started talking about it.
Also because Griffin looked very strange. Now, usually people don't welcome strangers during off seasons. Now, here he is coming at such a time where people are not welcome, not welcomed as a you don't find people. So it was quite suspicious for everybody there. The landlord of the inn where Griffin stayed, Mr. Hall, made a lot of efforts to be friendly with Griffin, but he did not want to talk. No, he wanted to find out what was all about Griffin. He clearly told her that his reason for coming to Iping was for peace and quietness, and he did not want to wish to be disturbed in his work. So Mrs. Hall was not disclosed anything, but was given false things by Griffin. The landlord's wife, Mrs. Hall, accepted that her new guest was a strange scientist and was ready to excuse his temper and habits as he had paid her in advance. So obviously the money mattered here. Griffin had paid Mrs. Hall a lot of money in advance, so she don't have any choice but to continue and tolerate Griffin. Then the time came when his money was over and he had to go. No ready cash available for further payments at the inn. He had to pretend that he was waiting for a check which could arrive at any moment. Then something really strange happened. The clergyman and his wife was awakened by some noise in their study room. When they were coming downstairs, they could hear the sound of money being taken from the clergyman's desk. Now, the Griffin was stealing money from clergyman's desk. The clergyman held a metal rod in his hand and flung the door open. As soon as he opened the door, he was surprised and shouted, surrendered, as he thought he could catch the thief. To their surprise, they couldn't see anyone. They looked under the desk, behind the curtains, and also up the chimney, but the person was nowhere to be seen. Yet the desk had been opened and the housekeeping money was gone. Then the clergyman kept on saying, extraordinary affair, the whole day because he had was shocked by the incident. But the things that happened with Mrs. Hall's furniture were much more fascinating. Mrs. Hall and her husband woke up very early and were surprised as the door to the guest was open. Usually his room's door remained closed and locked. He used to get very angry if anyone tried entering his room. It was an ordinary but a great opportunity, and Mrs. Halls didn't want to miss it. They decided to investigate when they saw that nobody was inside the room. His bed sheets were cold, which showed that he must have been up for a while, and also all the bandages that he used to tie around his face was lying around the room. Suddenly, Mrs. Hall heard a sniff close to her ear, and Griffin's hat that was lying on the bed was flung towards Mrs. Hall and hit on her face. So obviously those poor creatures could not make head and tail about what was happening around them, and Griffin was completely invisible. Then the chair in the room dashed itself, hitting Mrs. Hall in her legs. As they got scared, Mrs. Hall and her husband were going out of the room when the chair closed the door, and suddenly a sound of slamming the door and locking were heard. This terrorized Mrs. Hall, and she was about to fall down from the chair. She was convinced of the thought that there were spirits in her in's room and that that stranger has caused this to happen. She mourned that her mother used to sit in the chair which hid her legs, and thought that how could it rise up against her? The neighbors of Mrs. Hall thought that it was a witchcraft which has caused such things to happen. When the news of the burglary at the clergyman's house reached other people in the town, everyone started suspecting the stranger scientist. Suspicion grew stronger on him when he produced ready cash for his payment at the inn, even though he had told some time back that he did not have money and was waiting for a check to arrive. The village constable was called for, and Mrs. Hall did not want to wait for him. She went straight to Griffin as he had appeared from the empty bedroom at the inn.
She asked him what had he been doing upstairs to his chairs and furniture. She also asked him how did he come out of the empty bedroom or enter the locked room. The scientists became really angry and started shouting that they didn't understand who or what he was and decided to show them the truth. He removed his bandages, whiskers, spectacles, and all those falseness. It took him just a minute to do all this, and the people in the bar were horrified as they looked at the headless man. Mr. Jeffers, the constable of the village, surprised as he saw he had to arrest a man without a head. But Jeffers still wanted to do his duty as he knew that the magistrate wanted him to arrest the person and it did not matter that he had a head or not. As he threw away more and more of his clothes, he became more and more invisible, and finally, after Griffin removed his shirt, he was nowhere to be seen, and Jeffers was struggling to arrest a man who had become completely invisible. People who tried helping Jeffers were also struggling as they were hit by blows from nowhere. As Jeffers made his last attempt to catch hold of the invisible man, he was knocked unconscious by the invisible man. Everybody was shouting, "Hold on, hold him," repeatedly, but Griffin had set himself free from them and nobody could understand how to catch him.